What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. It's November 30th of 2022, and I'm here with my co-host, Nolan. How's it going, Nolan?
Chris, I love life. Things couldn't be better. We're getting a great crypto clown show today in New York City. Andrew Ross Sorkin, who I've interviewed with a few times, getting back his crypto chops. We have a great crypto clown show. The interview is going to take place at 5 o'clock this afternoon. If you want to see a clown show, sure. If you want to see a real Bitcoin show, come to Miami, May 18th to the 20th, and you can experience Bitcoin 2023, where we're actually going to have interesting content, not excuses and controlled messaging, which is what we're seeing. So it turns out SBF broke his silence yesterday. SBF had his first public statements worth anything since all of this happened. And what we found out is a bunch of nothing. He's sad, there's some remorse. What we can even be suspicious of is that he targeted who I'm sure has some chops. It looks like she did her best. She had a phone call. Her name is Tiffany Fong. She's been in the content creation business in this industry for about 5 months. She came to notoriety because she made a video saying she lost $200,000 on the Celsius platform and has been on the Celsius plan, content-wise for a while now. Updates on Mashinsky and everything that's going on in Celsius. So turns out that that whole thing became part of SBF's targeted communication strategy that we've seen play out across all forms of media since the trouble erupted. We've seen tons of confusion where, it was all just leverage, which is the point of this whole interview. We see that it's all leverage, they blew up because they didn't have risk management, without ever talking about the actual fiduciary responsibilities they're supposed to have. You're not supposed to use customer funds. So all of this strategically placed, I would say at this point, strategically placed empathetic frames that have been used by SBF are now on full display yesterday. So good on Tiffany. I think she did her best. I'm going to keep watching her content because she definitely didn't let him off the hook, but the whole thing was a big cope session and emotions. We did get a little bit of interesting information out of it where SBF said that he has given political donations to both parties, Republicans and Democrats, but we know that's fake. It was all to the Uniparty. All of his political donations were to the January 6th people and also to the anti-Trump group. So the whole point was anti-Trump. It was to support anyone who was against Trump. So while it might be both parties, that's in name only, I think, to most people. This was a political force and donated money to political causes, and it's all on display. So that's all we have to say about that fella for today. We're going to bring you the news about what he actually said to Andrew Ross Sorkin in the afternoon, but it'll probably be as controlled and boring as his talk with Tiffany Fong yesterday.
Yeah, well, maybe we're not done with him completely. So Prime Trust is shaking it up. And how does this tie to SBF, as I was saying? The crypto services firm Prime Trust has fired their CEO, Tom Pageler. It's in its latest shakeup. It appears that he's being fired because they've been tracking the political donations that SBF was making, and it seems that they had routed some of their payments through Prime Trust. I don't know what the reason is. Obviously, if they're running FTX, they have hot wallets, or Dylan LeClaire was trying to look for their cold wallet. Apparently, they didn't have any, and they were just keeping it like very degen trader hot on the internet. Which when you're running a $33 billion exchange, not the best idea, but hey, I don't run an exchange and I'm not a security expert, but that's just my 2 cents. But it seems that some of the donations were going through Prime Trust, almost like using it as like a money laundering front. That's just what it appears to me. I'm not one to say one way or the other, but obviously Prime Trust has fired their CEO, and this was a decision by their board ultimately to let him go. Maybe it was because of this. Maybe it's because of just the way the industry's been going, and we're in obviously crypto winter. But that's just my 2 cents on it all. Anything else you want to add, Nolan?
Yeah, as cryptic as SBF has been throughout all of this, the what happened stuff and all of that business, I will say that he endeared himself to me when he did the Truth and Beauty tweet. Truth and Beauty, beauty and truth. Basically, the statement that you don't need to look too far. Everything is right in front of you. And I appreciated that because the more I look at it, the more obvious this is exactly what it looks like. And the Prime Trust case would fit into that narrative. So We'll still wait for confirmation that this was a big money laundering operation, but things certainly don't look like they're working in any direction that would make me think otherwise, that would make me not. Let's keep looking for truth and beauty in SBF, that beautiful bugger.
Definitely. Well, you want to tell us how, Nolan, how the maybe Bitcoin bear of forever, Warren Buffett, it may actually be becoming a Bitcoiner. So if you want to break that story for us.
Well, yeah. So it turns out there's been some analysis done that Warren Buffett has outperformed Bitcoin over the last 5 years with this strategy. But never forget, the thing about Warren Buffett that you got to give him credit for, you always have to give him credit for. He's like a Bitcoiner in this way. He was always about not paying for investors, buying indexes. What I mean by that is the overlap is this shouldn't be difficult. You shouldn't need an IQ of 130 financial advisors. You shouldn't require a Series 7 license from Wall Street to participate. In the end, he said, buy these certain types of American companies according to very simple rubric or heuristic or rules, and then hold, right? Hold for a long time. So right away there, that simplicity, right? Find something you like, love it, hold it. Of course, Bitcoiners have found the thing they love more than anything else, but nevertheless, the whole direction that he's going in is very similar, that he's been in all his life is very similar. And the reason I mention it now is because on top of that, we get our fun friends over at BlackRock, right? What happened to BlackRock today? Well, BlackRock's ESG fund has been shut down. BlackRock was the main force behind bringing ESG into the mainstream. They've been pushing it. What is ESG in the end? It's just more of what Warren Buffett is arguing against. It's more of this confusopoly. It's more services that people can sell you. It's more distance between you and your actual wealth. It's more people picking at the pie. And Warren Buffett has warned against these kinds of service providers for a long time. He's warned against the prime trusts and all these kinds of folks who are out there trying to sell you new bespoke services. And in the end, right, in the end, we can forgive him for his age and might not know what's coming up and might still miss stuff. I still think the guy preaching this hodling thing works, right? His whole time preference for how to invest is something Bitcoiners should continue to admire. And the results are there, right? We just have to know that the thing that we love is better than all the little guys he loves, right? That's the difference.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes out of Warren Buffett, I've learned a lot from him, even though we differ on Bitcoin per se, is in the short term, the stock market or investing is just a voting machine. So literally he's making fun of the voting system. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. Obviously, you want it to weigh the most in terms of coins or money or whatever you're valuing your net worth in.
And I've always said his original, I actually did a media tour when he made his first statements about Bitcoin, calling it rat poison squared. I went on CNN and I said, no, he's right. It's rat poison squared. And the CNN folks were like, what do you mean? And I said, well, I mean, he's forgot it. To banks, it certainly is rat poison. It'll kill them all. He's got to be very careful. So he was right about it the whole time.
It's just the context or the framing was different than what they perceived, but that's for sure. But getting into the Larry Fink of it all, they lost $24 million in an investment in FTX, which is pretty ironic because when we're looking through the records, FTX didn't even have a bank account. So not only will BlackRock write them a check, I don't even know how they wired it to their bank account. Or they're like, hey, we're paying FTX, but it's going to Alameda Research Group is the funny thing.
Truth and beauty, Chris. Truth and beauty. That's all it is. Truth and beauty. ESG, truth and beauty. They had it figured out.
I guess so. They wrote them a check and they just sent it to a different address, and they didn't do their due diligence. But I guess when you have 7 trillion assets under management, you can do whatever you want. But yeah, it seems that with all of the legalese of BlackRock and all the brilliant or mind capture in that group, they would have done slightly more due diligence. But hey, what am I? I don't know. I'm just a Bitcoiner.
You get what you pay for. You get what you pay for.
Definitely. So there seems to be news coming out of Brazil. Nolan, do you want to break that story for us?
Yeah, the big news for Bitcoin, it looks like there's a vote that passed their Congress that will make Bitcoin a payment platform and a legal means of payment. There's a bit of a hiccup in it in that it has to go to the president's office in Brazil. And if you're not paying attention to what's going on in Brazil, it's unclear who the president is. There was an election which is being contested by the population. So the sitting president, Bolsonaro, who some people throw into the Trump world, and it looks like Trump's advisors are down there with him right now to talk about election interference and what might have gone on. But it's been about a month now, and you've got tens of millions of people protesting. I think it's one of the largest protests in the history of the world, is what I've been told, but I could be wrong. We've got people coming from the Amazon who are joining in. And one of the really interesting things that has come of it, well, here's two interesting pieces. So De Silva, the fellow who technically won the election, is promising to put Assange out of jail, by the way. He'll help spring Assange. That's what he said, but he's probably just courting some attention. We'll see, but we got to give him credit for that. Pretty interesting stuff. But the best news we've had about Brazil lately is that Glenn Greenwald, who lives in Brazil, started his Rumble show last night. And I think he's going to be able to cover all the information coming out of Brazil in a way that we're not used to. So let's all of a sudden look at the scenario. We've got Glenn Greenwald, who's going to be covering the very tense situation in Brazil. And now suddenly Bitcoin has entered the conversation as this bill, does it pass lame duck status? Remember, in the United States, emancipation during the Civil War was passed during a lame duck Congress at the end of the Civil War. And it was the people who were just about to, they had already lost or won their elections. It was in this time now where we just had our midterms in the United States. They ended, 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. And all the people who won won't take their seats until January. So there's a lame duck period where lots ends up getting done. And that's how emancipation was done in the United States, or the end of slavery. I think emancipation happened before. So separate bills, but nevertheless, the big change happened in that lame duck session. So crazy things can happen in a lame duck session, really crazy stuff. So all of a sudden we're going to have the best journalist in the world, let's say. Let's just call him that right now, right? That's my opinion. I could be wrong. We're going to have the best journalist in the world on Rumble, the platform with the least censorship that we can have, the most confidence. We're going to have a big open conversation. And suddenly the lame duck session is going to be looking to sign a Bitcoin bill with important ramifications. So we might get intense scrutiny, intense attention on what's going on in Brazil, and there might be an amazing Bitcoin angle as we go forward. So big news what Brazil did yesterday as far as passing the law through Congress, even bigger as far as attention on what could happen. I'm not saying it will. The president might sign it in the lame duck. It might be over, right? It might be that simple, but we'll see what happens. A lot of attention there, and we got Glenn Greenwald on the job now, so that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and there was a great talk at B22 or Bitcoin 22 down in Miami with Glenn Greenwald as one of the panelists on it. I believe it was with David Zell, Andrew Yang, Joe Jorgensen, and Alan Farrington. So it was a great, and Glenn Greenwald was on the panel as well. So it was a great talk, talking about the freedom aspect and the freedom fighters aspect of it, which was really fantastic conversation. So you can check it out on our YouTube. But it seems crypto winter is cold and chilly, and it has hit another one. What do I mean by this? Casa announces they will be supporting the collaborative custody of ETH for their customers. We've said on this show before, third parties are security holes. Obviously, the counterpunch to that is there's another company called Unchained Capital that does something very similar, collaborative custody, or doing a multi-sig with you and a third party. I don't know if this is a good thing, but I think it just shows that collaborative custody or multi-sig is not as much of a viable business model as some people would have hoped. I think it is valuable in the long run, but it just shows how early we are, that maybe they don't have institution adoption where you can get a small fee of like, hey, if you're the collaborative custody, instead of going to Coinbase, like Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy, instead of them going to Coinbase, if they were to go to Casa and Unchained, that's, I think, where more of the money's made, where they can have a small fee to certify or verify that they're keeping your funds safe in conjunction with you and your board of directors or whatever it may be. It's sad to see, and I don't know. I guess it just shows the business model of it all. I don't know how secure you can secure ETH, because ETH in the past, as people have known, the DAO hack, the infamous DAO hack, when there was a hack, they rolled back and they literally hard forked Ethereum like overnight within a few hours to do a different protocol. So if it's like having the asset in your hands and then it becomes quicksand. It just sinks through your hands. So, that's a challenge in and of itself, but I'll leave that up to them. Nolan, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's even more complicated because they have fiduciary responsibilities as a custodian in this case. And when you have this ETH lockup situation because of the migration and the complexity theater and, oh my God, wait for the merge and the splurge and the zurge and the glurge and the plurge and all the other stuff. And you got all this stuff going on, and suddenly the time frame for ETH staked withdrawals for 2.0 goes from next year to the year after to shut up about it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't know. So it would be difficult. Forget about the consensus pieces and the finality of transactions, let's say. Forget about all that for a second. Just look at the practical nuts and bolts of what Casa is as a business and what it's got itself into. And I think there could be some trouble there because expectations are that this thing works as advertised. And I think they're going to have to increase customer service support to answer all the confusing questions about what happened to their staked ETH. And that's just my guess. But they might not like the added costs that will come with what the heck's up, man? So we'll see. We'll see.
For sure. Well, 2 + 3 = 5 last time I checked, Nolan. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about Web 5. So Web 2 was like the internet of social media and all. Web 3 was kind of like what these crypto scams were promoting as like, this is the decentralized, centralized, decentralized crypto token way of doing X, Y, and Z. Well, so obviously TBD is a company that's run by Jack Dorsey, which is under the parent company of Block. There's Square, there's Block, or Block, Square, Spiral, and TBD is one of the companies under it. What they're infamous for doing is they're doing LDK, which is Lightning Developer Kit, or BDK, which is Bitcoin Developer Kit. They're trying to open source, making it easier for Bitcoin wallets or Lightning applications. They're trying to basically build these kits that are free and open source for people to use. And I give Jack Dorsey a lot of props. I don't think there's a lot of money in it right now. They're obviously trying to build a very cheap and inexpensive hardware wallet, but he's kind of funding it with the money that they take in from obviously Cash App or the Bitcoin that they sell on that platform. And they're, shifting into free and open source projects, which I give him a lot of props for. So where does the Web 5 of it all come from? So months ago, Jack Dorsey tweeted out, Web 5. And everyone's like, what happened to Web 4? What about Web 3? What's this mean? And he's like, those are all like, he's like, you missed Web 4. That was like the joke. But Web 5 was kind of a spinoff of like, no, this is where the true signal is. And with that, he's seen lately, or at least their account tweeted out a message. It was a screenshot of the notepad. And it said that they've seen the Web 5 termed in what they seem to be public commercial interest. So I guess it means a lot of the crypto space is now caught up with the grift or caught up with the joke. And they're now using it as like the Web 5 platform. And like, we have backing by Jack Dorsey. I don't really know the full context, but that's what I would assume something would have happened. And at first, TBD and Jack Dorsey, they were thinking of trademarking the word Web 5. There was a lot of pushback for this because a lot of Bitcoiners and libertarian-minded people that fall in the space see trademarks as kind of infringement on free and open source software. And, it's kind of counterintuitive to be you're a free and open source company or FOSS, and then you're now trademarking a name for it. So after much pushback and community outreach, they've decided to walk back and they're not going to patent the word Web 5. I guess it's more buyer beware and, obviously don't trust, verify. That's kind of the ethos of Bitcoin. Anything you want to add to this, Nolan?
Yeah, so I actually did my show, The Breakup, 8 a.m.s on Twitter and YouTube and Rumble. I did a bit of it on that today, and it's only loosely connected, but I'll explain why. So this is, tech MAGA. So MAGA being Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Amazon. And, I compared it to what would happen if Elon Musk goes through with his threat to build a new phone, right? What does that look like? So where does it all go? Well, in my mind, if he's going to build his own new phone, the advantages he has are the following. He's got the satellites, so he can cut out the cell phone companies, so he can go immediately and he's got the service provider immediately baked into the phone. But I thought it can go even further than that. What Web 5 more or less suggests is that the bandwidth capacity of 5G can allow for a mobile device to actually use the normal web-based internet. You can use web pages again. You don't need apps anymore, basically, is what it comes down to. The apps are gone. You won't require them. And this totally changes the architecture of the system. And it turns it into less where the actual platform is designed to induce apps to develop on the platform, because those are the real clients. The clients of the cell phone companies today, of tech MAGA, are not the people who buy the phones like us. It's the developers who create the apps that allow for the information capture, that allow them to turn into drug delivery devices for dopamine and other stimulation and all the kind of addictive habits we know about. But of course, you're trading your personal information in order for these stupid Web2 apps to run cryptographic keys for you. So what Jack Dorsey is basically saying here is that devices can key sign themselves, and that the keys will be held on the devices. So the device ends up interacting very differently with the internet, very differently with everything around it that we're used to with this whole app and capture thing. Because if you put, if you think of it like this, 20 years ago, we would have never built this app ecosystem unless there was some value for these companies and the way it was working. That's why David Sachs said yesterday on Twitter that the whole startup scene has actually been inhibited because of this app capture model. And we actually haven't had startup culture in years because everything funnels to these app stores, and that's really all startups are. It's just a new app that's incrementally different. We would never have 15 communications app if we lived in a sane world, right? You would have a communications app, and the communications would be secure and it would be very easy. So in my world here, you've got sort of AI that will help understand the function that you need. You can just start saying numbers and a spreadsheet would come up, and if you start reading out a note, an email would write itself, messages, it'd be very simple. But the point is the device would key sign itself, and it would totally change the architecture. So what he's saying here, great that they haven't patented the title, this stuff is happening anyway. And what he's talking about with the Web5 project, TBD, that fits exactly into what Elon Musk is threatening. And it's not about getting around the App Store. It's about destroying the idea of the App Store, which is a very powerful idea.
Yeah, I think that is very fascinating. So tell us what's coming out of the ECB or the European Central Bank. They're talking about stability. How much of a joke is that, Nolan?
Oh, I love it. I think we're gonna put a session on this show later called Moscow Time. Speaking of our friend Jack Dorsey, we want it to be the fakest news of the day. Moscow Time. I've been practicing it on my show in the morning on the breakup, and this is pure Moscow time. It's perfect, right? So the European Central Bank has come out with this statement about what's going on with Bitcoin these days, and they put Bitcoin in the title. They say, the European Central Bitcoin Bank says that Bitcoin price stabilization is a last gasp before it embarks on a road to irrelevance. So everyone, basically engaging with this tweet today, having a good laugh. And, you can't help but say, like, whenever I hear Europe now, they're sitting there freezing. I can just imagine them like, energy illiterate people listening to Greta saying, oh, this is great. We're doing so much for the world. It's wonderful. We're burning our forests and we're a little bit hot, even though we don't have forests to do it next year. And we're buying oil at prices that will completely wipe out our entire pension system. And all the old people here won't be able to afford heat next year. But who cares? Who cares? Greta, the teenage girl who we thought we could make happy and she could enjoy her teenage life because we got rid of capitalism. None of it worked. None of it worked. So at a certain point, Europe just has to be the thing that fills the void that woke people created by destroying comedy. It just has to be the thing we laugh at now, because whatever was funny before got destroyed by the culture wars. So we gotta go with what we got. And right now, the European Union is a riot. So I hope they enjoy their cold winter. I'm sorry about the last of your forests. It's a bummer. Shouldn't listen to Greta, but what am I supposed to say? But keep telling us, keep supplying more of these great obituaries because we love them. They get funnier. The thing about them is they get funnier as time goes on, right? Like in 2 years when they're even colder, because they're still not going to fix any of this stuff, and they're still talking about shutting down farms, and they're still talking about shutting down nuclear power plants. Then we can refer to this and say, oh, remember the days when you still had some forests? Remember those days, right? That'll be great. All that said, the French folks are doing the nuclear power thing, so I'll give them a pass. I said yesterday on the show that England could turn into a pirate island again and maybe have some success and is not part of this European thing. That's true, but at least the French are investing heavily in nuclear power, and they should be able to avoid the worst of this if they don't keep giving Bitcoin any trouble.
That's awesome. And it's funny talking of stability. So the EU or the euro has gone down 99.96% relative to Bitcoin since 2013, which the euro is only 20 years old and Bitcoin's only been around since 2009. So it's funny that they're saying calling for stability and it's gone down relative to Bitcoin that much. Nolan,
I
what do
have
you
a
want to add?
confession. I have a confession. The night the euro was created, I was in Europe and I counterfeited the hell out of it because no one. It was done on New Year's Eve. It was done on New Year's Eve. It was New Year's Eve, right, where they created it, and so everything on New Year's Eve, literally that night, turned it from francs to euros. So we were just, having a bit of a party, and we just printed them off the printer like a commercial printer, and handed them out.
Oh my gosh, that's
In the
hilarious.
confusion of new bills and New Year's Eve parties, it was a good time. So
That's wild. Speaking of Fed Watch or the Fed in general, the European Central Bank, we're going to be doing Fed Watch tomorrow. So Nolan's going to be joining Ansel. CK is not going to be able to make it for this week, but Thursdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern will be our new time. But our final story of the day before wrapping up is fiat savings instruments continue to collapse. So while your money's collapsing, the thing that you're putting your money or your fiat money into is collapsing as well. What do I mean by that? The US government is going to be backstopping mortgages that are priced over $1 million for the first time in its history. What does this mean? Historically, the United States government would backstop things that were under $1 million, but it seems that the things are getting so bad that they will potentially backstop mortgages and this is the way of bailing out banks. So if you're to default on your loan, they're not going to just come in and give you money to save you, but God forbid, the value of the house drops faster, then the bank can sell it as collateral to recoup some of the loans that they've lost. The U.S. government's going to be printing more money to backstop the banks and basically keep them. So FDIC insurance, now they're insuring houses as well. I mean, the fiat money printing needs to continue. It's not going on right now, but it's only a matter of time. Anything you want to add there, Nolan?
yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you debase your currency and don't make it useful as a savings instrument. What ends up happening is other things will take the place. Other things will fill the vacuum. And in the case of America, we used houses as a proxy for savings, and because theoretically it held its value and the value went up. And everyone now is collectively betting on that, of course, that housing remains the stable force for your savings and your wealth accumulation. It was a great vehicle for many years, but we all know the Cantillon effects and what happens, and so that's why we Bitcoin, right? It's not, it can work for a little while, but at a certain point, the entropy of that arrangement sets in and it becomes unpalatable to people. So the sign that the number is going up, that the relative amount insured is going up, just shows that it is failing now in its job, and that housing prices are continuing to inflate. And we all worry what could happen if that thing goes south.
Definitely. So thank you for joining us, everyone. We hope to see you in Miami from May 18th through the 20th. You can use code BMLive to get 10% off your tickets. Ticket prices will be going up in the coming weeks, so get them before the new year, before they do go up in cost. And thanks for joining us. Anything else you want to add, Nolan?
No, that's it. I can't wait. The event's going to be great. And we're going to be doing a new feature. We're going to have some guests at a certain point. I saw in the comments people were wondering about guests. We are going to be bringing guests that will be at Bitcoin Miami in May. Shortly, we're going to be doing it maybe next week, but could be the week after. But certainly from the new year on, it's going to be a regular feature. And we're going to start a few other shows that'll help give context to, or a few other guests that will help us regularly give context to the event in May. So can't wait to see you there. It's going to be a good time.
Have a good one, everyone. Peace out.